Okay, today is part 3 of the integration of PBIS and time in to get the successful behavioral cultural change in your school with Kiti Randall. This was a 3-part in-service. This is the final part of the first day, and we're really going to get into the nuts and bolts of the integration. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. Let's just get into it. At the end, the slides will be there. I just wanted to make a note. She does not cover slide number 20, and she skips over slide number 25 and 26. They will be addressed later, but she skips them in this one. All right, let's get into it.
So, my journey in time in has now science continues to validate what many of us know, what you do every day, is that people form people and people change people. Okay? Relationships, time in, whether it was healthy or not, relationships can create maladaptive patterns. And remember, I don't like the word psychopathology. It means it's a pathological response. The reason I misbehave, the reason I bring those experiences to the classroom that are maladaptive to you is because they were adaptive out there. Okay? Right? So it isn't necessarily, now you have maybe some particular things that might be syndromic or something that have that, but in general, most everything that is brought into your classroom was developed as an adaptive behavior to survive somewhere or to have needs met somehow. Because we're born as creatures to have needs met, right? And so we're going to find ways to do it. And the important thing is if a child has maladaptive behaviors that now are understood within the context of the classroom, because for some kids, the first time they've been required to sit still and da-da-da-da is the classroom. At grade 1 in kindergarten is where we get the huge overflow of behaviors. Guess where else it happens? Grade 7 and 8. Because the brain is changing, right? So the brain is having to understand abstract concept, understand different things. So your big hits are going to be when they're just starting school because they've never had that experience before, and when the brain is changing at around grade 7 or 8. Okay? So those are things. So what we know is that all human development it occurs within the context of relationship, whether it's vision, whether it's learning, whether it's attention, whether it's memory, whatever it is, it happens in the context of relationship. And students will act and react based on their relational experiences in their life. That's the theory behind, if you want to think academically, what time in is. It's about connecting to the students on understanding those kinds of things. So, we'll go. So, how early does this happen? Okay, so I talked about the vision thing. In order to know that somebody's treating you a certain way, you have to have a sense of self, right? You have to know you exist at some level, right? Otherwise you don't know you're being treated in a certain way. So we learned in psychology through the Piagetian models, you know, the development of self and the self-construct, 7 to 8, then we went 3 to 5. Well, even Piaget, kind of in his late writings that didn't get published as much, kind of changed that up a little, but it wasn't put in those nice steps that would be easier for learning, and so we just never embraced it. But we have more literature now showing that it actually happens at birth. Okay? So Philippe Rochat is a French researcher who studies what's called self-cognition, the awareness that you exist, okay? That I'm not just happening out there. Now, there are others who are looking at fetal attachment, but that gets into more political arenas, so most people stay on the after-birth side. So, what he did, and this is just a really interesting thing, is he took that time, you know, that peaceful time where you can just sit and observe. Wouldn't you love to just be like a little person in the corner of your classroom and just be able to observe what's going on so that you're not in the middle of it to figure out what to do? Well, and that's why having somebody who comes in and helps you isn't a bad thing. It's a great thing because it's that mouse in the little corner who's helping you figure out what's going on. Oh, I don't want to call people who do that mice, but, you know, everybody don't offend this. But anyway, so, but what he saw was, do you know the rooting reflex? You touch the corner of a baby's mouth and they turn in that direction to get food, right? It's for survival, right? So you get touched here, you go for food, right? That's survival in an infant. What he found was, in the first couple hours of life, the infant learns never to turn to their own touch. that that's self, right? They'll only turn to other touch. So already they have a sense of how other treats them because they know self-touch from other. So it's fascinating how quickly and early this develops about does other meet my needs and what do I do to have other meet my needs. Okay? Those patterns are set up. And so it becomes so early on in life. And it's that, so what happens then is, you know, I do something, something happens. And it's what I call the synchronicity of relationship. Give, take, back, forth, right? We have some friends who you can't get a word in edgewise. They don't know that pattern, really, right? So it's that give, take, back and forth pattern, okay? And so some children have never had the dance of relationship. They've never had what it's like to do, give, take, back, forth in a healthy way. So that happens very, very early on in life and they won't know how to do it. So I want to talk about, I do believe, before I say this, that time out in its original intent had good purpose, okay? And the purpose was, I'm escalating, let me figure out how to de-escalate you, okay? The way it's used now is really to take kids away from something, okay? And the way I see parents use it is go in the corner and think about how bad you are and then come back out here, right? Not good, right? Because what did they learn in the corner? That they were rejected, right? Abandoned, they were bad. Did they learn any skill sets in the corner? No, except maybe anger, right? Or something else, I don't know. But it doesn't really provide the skill sets for a child to change behavior, okay, when you do it that way. The other thing is, what do we know in education about when does most learning take place? When you're on test, right? There's tons of literature. I mean, it seems like duh, right? But there's tons of literature saying the more time on task, the more learning occurs. But the strategy we often use is remove them from the task, right? And there's different reasons for it. So I'm not trying to undermine that there aren't a whole lot of issues going on there. But if we want to look at the constructs and then how to deal with it, we have to be honest about where it comes from. So the reason I don't like time out is because, one, it taught you to ignore behaviors. It taught parents to ignore behaviors. Just ignore them and it will go away. A child usually can't perform the way you want to because they don't have the right skill sets. So I don't mean reinforce the misbehavior, but there might be a skill set they still need your help with. Remove them from the situation, and it doesn't provide skills training. Okay? So time in, for me, addresses the misbehavior. What is the etiology of what is happening? Why is it happening? It's important. All behavior expresses something. Okay? It might not be expressing exactly what's right in front of our face, but it's coming from somewhere. What percent of kids do you think in your classroom have some kind of trauma history or loss history? 20%? 30%? 20? Okay.
30%.
Yeah. It varies, but there's a good percentage in there that do. And so when you use timeout with a child who's ever been abandoned, ever been rejected, ever been traumatized, you're re-traumatizing them, right? Because you're validating what template? I'm not worthy, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this. And so they're going to choose what? Behaviors that continue to validate that they're not worthy. So I'm a bad kid, so I'm going to continue to choose behaviors that have you tell me I'm a bad kid. Okay? So we want to address the misbehavior. I want to know where it's coming from. And it might be that that happens in the classroom. If it continues as a pattern, it might be that it happens with the school supports. Or it might be that we need other professionals to get involved in this children or family's life, should that be a possibility. We try as much in time in to keep a student in the environment that we need them to function in, because remember, what's a student's occupation, using OT words? The student's occupation is to be in school and learn, right? So our goal for time in is to keep the child in school and learning as much as possible. That's what our goal is for them. And we have to deal with the etiology. Do they need skill sets? Do they need some attention in some other way? And do they need caring? So how do we make it a win-win journey for a child? How do we say, yes, I see your problem. Yes, you need a consequence. But yes, we're going to help you. That's what we want on this journey, is to provide that kind of experience for the students. So I'm going to give you a couple of time-in examples, just of different ones that either I know about because of a colleague or because I was involved. The first one is about some parents that I saw who had adopted a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. They were both drug exposed, high-risk children, and these were very well-meaning parents. They hadn't been parents before, so they all of a sudden have this 4-year-old and this 2-year-old. And so they come in and they're all distressed because the 4-year-old girl bites or hits or beats up the little 2-year-old boy. And so they said, we have tried time out and it is not working. So she doesn't come back and do whatever it is they want. And I said to them, and I said, well, what do you think she's learned in time out that would give her the skills to do what you want? And they looked like me, like I was speaking another language. Like, what are you talking about? They're just supposed to go in the corner and come back and do what you want, right? So I said, actually, she has a trauma history, and what she's really doing over there is having flashbacks about her trauma. And is this going to be the same kind of environment for her? So she comes out dysregulated. She doesn't come out regulated. She comes out dysregulated. So she comes out right away and hits her brother right away because it was because of him that she got dysregulated. So they looked at me and said, well, then what would you do? And I said, well, obviously your children don't have the skill sets that they need to be able to do that. And remember, there are things we need to learn here to function here. And if you have gaps here, this isn't going to work well. So some of your interventions in your classroom have to go to very basic, there's a kid who needs you every day to say, hey, glad you're here today, to fill that nurturing need he never got at home before he can focus on the ones up here, right? So there are some of those things, and then teachers or others will tell me, well, is it fair because not all the students get that, or whatever. I said, well, if a kid drops down in your class and needs CPR, you're going to be like, oh, I can't give them all CPR, so it's not fair, so we'll just let that one go, right? Okay, that's a stupid analogy, but it makes sense, right? So we have to be able to know. We have to be able to say, what does this child need? And we might need help with that. It can't be all biased. But anyway, so I said, okay, if you want them to color together, you get on the floor. Oh my goodness. How many parents will not get on the floor anymore and play with their kids? It's amazing, right? It's like, everybody says, oh, you work with kids, good for you, I can't. And they have their own, And so I say, you get on the floor, they can't share a paper, so you have to rip it in half because they haven't learned combined play. So you rip it in half, and then you help them how to negotiate crayons. Or if they can't negotiate, you say, these are yours and these are yours. And you stay there until they learn the task. We get it with toileting, okay? For some reason, our culture can get it with toileting. We don't go and say, that nasty child, when are they ever going to do something about those diapers, right? Pooping all over the place. We don't do that. What do we do? Okay, my sister had triplets. It was the greatest, doing the toiletry, right? Because they each had their pot. They each had their sticker chart. They all had to compare who did what and which one. There was reports and clapping. But I'll tell you, right?
Oh, wow.
The moment they learned how to do it themselves, did they want you there? No, they were confident, they had the skills, they could do it themselves, and they wanted to show you they could do it themselves. Why can't we do that when we see a child who's struggling in another area? I don't care if it's academically, or behaviorally or what? It means the child is struggling and they need our time in to develop the skill sets to be able then to function independently. Okay? They may not want your help necessarily, but that's what they need. They need your time in. So then I had a parent who heard me talk at a parent meeting, and I was talking about time in and so forth. And it just so happened that that next week, the school called and said, your son's acting out in math class every day. He's going to be expelled for a week. And he said, oh, wait, no, it's time in. No, actually, he won't be expelled, but I'll be coming to school with him in the mornings, because that's when math was, all week. Okay? So you wish you had those parents, right? And we'll talk about timing with parents another time maybe, but you wish you had all of those parents. But what this parent learned was having his child out of the classroom and off task was not how his kid was going to learn, right? So he said, no, I'm coming in. It only took 2 periods, like 2 math periods. 1 for that kid to learn to know how to behave in math class, but 2 for the father to know his child was struggling and it was a distraction because he needed tutoring in math. He wasn't getting it, and he was a popular kid who didn't want the embarrassment for people who know he had a problem. So that was another. And then this was actually my colleague was working with this one, and a very clever parent. And what I'm trying to get here is that it takes creativity too. What we're doing, being a teacher takes creativity. Being able to manage children takes a ton of creativity. And so this was a 16-year-old girl who wanted to go on, it was a group date, but it was like kind of a boyfriend thing, and she asked her parents if she could go, and her dad said, yes, you can go, but this is the time you need to be in. Okay, I don't know what time it was. So she comes home late, and Dad's sitting there. And he goes, you know, you're late. And she goes, I know, it'll never happen again. And he goes, you're right, it will never happen again. And so she was like, but he didn't say grounded, right? Because once again, what does grounding do? It takes you out of the occupation of a teenager is to relate with peers, right? So the next weekend, she asked, can I go? And Dad says, sure, you can go again. And so she's like, whew, no consequence, right? Whatever. And so when she gets picked up, Dad has a book in his hand, and he's walking out the door with her. And she said, what are you doing? He said, you need to be with your friends. That's what you should be doing at your age. But you don't know how to negotiate it. So how to get keep yourself safe and get home on time. So I'm going to come with you until you learn how to do that. It took one time of time in that fashion. Okay? So those are stories to give you an analogy of what do I need. If there's a problem, we need to find out what is the student's occupation is to be on task, right? And to do things. So what is it we want to do? So in positive behavioral intervention and supports, it says that what we want to do is provide a culture. That's what we're talking in with Timon, right? A culture to achieve both social and academic success for all students. And so what we're trying to do is change social culture. Now it might be difficult to do that, right? Because we already have a little self-fulfilling prophecy here, right? We already have where kids know a certain way to behave. They already have a certain pattern, okay? So we'll split the room in half, and you each get a mouse, okay? You're in 7th grade, and you're getting a mouse. So all of you know what that feels like to be in 7th grade because you're here, okay? So in this side of the room, you have a mouse that was genetically engineered to be very, very bright. It's a smart mouse. And you, sorry, have plain regular mouse. Okay. So over here, you're excited because you got the smart mouse. So you got the Excel spreadsheet out, and you're looking at timing of feeding, temperature regulation, running the maze, because you're having to teach it to run a maze to get cheese. Over here, you're like really disappointed, right? Because you got regular mouse. And so after a day or so, somebody said, did anyone feed the mouse? But, you know, they're not really bright, so did they know they didn't really get fed yet? And so that these kind of conversations are going on, and then one of you actually does try to run it in the maze, but you're not as careful with a mouse that's not very smart, and you accidentally drop it on its head, and so you go, oh, I wonder if a little brain damage when you're not very bright is any problem. A conversation between two mothers really in my waiting room once scared me. Okay, so at the end of the week, yes, your mouse is ready for Mouse Olympics. I mean, it's doing this mouse doesn't know what cheese is yet. Okay, it's just the thing is, this experiment was done with 7th graders. That was the outcome of the experiment. But what's most important in there is, one, what was the label? The mice were from the same litter. No difference between the mice. The difference was the label the experimenter gave and the way the children treated the mice. If we're going to do time in, we have to watch what is the label that we're giving the kids we're working with and how they're treated. And our procedural memories are going to be there to say, bad kid, this is how I have to deal with him. Every morning I go, oh, that class period I have, and so we have to work with each other to try to not have the self-fulfilling prophecy, because if that kid keeps that label, that's their trajectory. Okay? So we want to be able to do that. So I know we're 5 minutes or...
How about 4? Negotiate for 4.
Okay, we'll negotiate. So I want to go through this really quickly, and maybe at some other point, if we have questions, we can talk about it more. But I see the key elements of what you need to be doing from a time-in perspective, but also what children need for their well-being is boundaries. They need your school rules, and they need consequences. Kids push boundaries because they need to know they're there. Okay? They need consistency and routine. Why? Because you're building healthy templates. Okay? And if I know what's going to come next, I don't have to worry about my environment. I can focus on my learning. But if your room doesn't have that consistency for me, and I have any trauma history at all, I'm all over the place, and I'm not learning in your classroom. Okay? And then I need caring others. I need social support. And so I think those constructs I've hit enough, so the next 3 slides I want you to just go through. Yeah. Keep going, keep going, keep going. And we'll miss that one. Okay, so what I see as time in here. So what I see as time in here is we need to look at time in. How do we capitalize time in at school? Okay, so if I recently saw that you had more suspensions here than some of the other schools in the area. So we want to look at how do we keep as many kids as possible in time in at school. I mean, that's our occupation here. So there's got to be strategies we've got to look at, and we have to work together. How do we keep time in the classroom? Then in class, how do we keep time in on task? How do we keep time in relationship? And how do we keep time in so that the student knows they're understood and the student understands you? Right? I don't have all the answers. What I have is, I know from neuroscience, from being a clinician, and from experience, that that's what the kids need to meet a positive trajectory and for you to be able to give them that gift. Okay? That's what they need. So some of the things that, happen if we say, okay, let's do a culture change. And I don't think it's a huge culture change because you've already got the PBIS concepts, constructs. What we're looking at is how to embed it and infuse it into the student culture as well, right? And so when you're doing that, students have pushback. If I have a procedural memory, no matter how bad it is, can I do this? That's too hard. Right? So I'm going to push back. Okay? What do they often say if you're trying to correct behavior? More negative behavior comes out before. Right? Right. So, and we can only be as effective as our weakest link. So I could be a great English teacher, but I have difficulty with behaviors in the classroom. But I know a colleague, or there's somebody else here, who can help me with that. We have to work together. And could somebody be called in? If there's a student acting out in your class, could somebody be called in to help keep them on task? Is there a way we can do it? It's going to take creativity. It's not like an easy answer, but there are things that we can do. So, the important thing about culture change is there's a lot of insanity that can go with it, and that really is, according to Albert Einstein, is that we're going to continue to say, okay, I want the culture change, but I'm going to do everything the same way as I usually do, and I expect it to be different. Sadly, that's the definition of insanity. So we can't. We have to change our procedural memories and our things as well, and it's going to be hard, and we're going to need each other. This is where you guys need time together as well. So, I don't know that I need to go in this as much, but I hinted to it. I think the first thing that I want to say is, if you're having a ton of suspensions, I'm assuming, and my assumption could be correct, is because all of you are aware of misbehaviors or rule breakages, so that everybody's on board with that they've all bought into it. I'm assuming that's what that is. Other people could say it's because you just have a bunch of bad kids and it's worse than any other school in the whole world. I don't think that's it. I think it's more the other. But we can't just say, oh, it means we're aware. We have to do something about what we're aware of. So it means that we need to address why are the numbers so high and how can we ameliorate it. It's not good enough to say, I catch it every time. What are you going to do about it? Okay? And it's important to look at the etiology and the etiology of where that's coming from. Is it related to consistency? Is it related to boundaries? Or is it related to this kid needing some more caring? Those, I think, are your three key elements that you're going to have to look at in terms of strategy. And we'll do the next one. I'm not going to do that. Just look at the, this one. Inappropriate or ineffective time in, which means that I'm targeting something, I'm trying to do time in, but I'm doing it inappropriately. If it's something that could be handled in the closest time in, which is on task, or in the classroom, but I'm handling it outside of that, it actually becomes time out. If it's something that should be handled at school, but I'm sending it home, that also becomes time out. Okay? So we have to come together and be creative about what is effective time in strategy, and when we see patterns, what are ways that we get support for that. Okay? So those are the kinds of things that we need to do. So what we do know is students who are prone to conflict do poorly, and all of these kinds of different things can happen. They do the distraction, they have all kinds of reasons why they're confronting you. The important thing to remember is what I said earlier. It isn't about you, and it's about something going on for them, so we have to find strategy. And just keep going to the next one. Keep going. Okay, so what I want to end with is that if we're going to change trajectories, we have to have a balance. We need to support the students and each other, but there has to be accountability. And how do we do that with the backdrop of time in, so that we can meet the needs and help them with their potential? And so this is what I want to end with. Changing our culture, our trajectories of our students, is it possible? So General George C. Marshall, who was charged to rebuild Europe after World War II, his quote is, "There's no limit to the good you can do if you don't care who gets the credit." And I think if we can do that together, and I don't even know at what level I'll be involved in that with you, but if you can embrace that as a group on behalf of these children, there is no better gift in your life you could have given to these kids than that, because you will make a difference in your kids' life.
Thank you, Dr. Randall.